Okay, so welcome everyone to our first breakout session, Cloud Transformation, the Greenfield Opportunity, but where do you start? Our moderator is Phil Dutton. He's the co-CEO and co-founder of Solidatus. Phil, you're joined by an esteemed panel, but I'll leave that up to you to introduce. But I think, Phil, you have a couple of opening comments to make, and then you'll bring the panel on board. So I'm going to drop to the background, and I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, John. As John mentioned, I'm Philip Dutton. I'm one of the co-CEOs and co-founders here at Solidatus. Solidatus is an innovative data management technology company empowering organizations to unlock the true business value behind their data. I will be moderating this hugely topical panel discussion on the real world practical implications and ramifications of undertaking this move to cloud journey. Solidatus has been partnered with the EDM Council for the last 3 years to provide the platform for the knowledge modeling capabilities, which started with DCAM, mapped against banking regulations such as BCBS 239, and then cross-industry regulations like GDPR, CCPA, CPRA. And in October, we'll be incorporating the recently released CDMC. Before we get into the discussion, just wanted to thank Mike, John, and the EDM Council team for their continued support and partnership with Solidatus as we strive to, like them, evangelize and educate the industry on why data management is such a critical piece of the puzzle and how it needs to evolve. As I'm sure we'll hear from panelists, the game has well and truly changed, and as a result, data management and our approaches and our tooling needs to change as well. And as you've just heard on the previous panel, cloud offers an amazing opportunity for all businesses to benefit. But with great opportunities also comes great challenge, as we've no doubt all experienced after the last day or so of internet outages and applications no longer working. No organization sets out with a strategy to create a siloed, tangled, poorly documented, and not well understood data mess. But this is what many organizations are currently faced with. So this panel will be focusing on how do we practically achieve the nirvana state of doing on-prem in the cloud much better than we did it the first time around. So in order to understand the journey of where we're going to, we first need to understand where we currently are. As you'll see, and has been talked about, cloud is currently a huge phenomenon with most organizations having it as one of their key strategic platforms, one of their key strategic transformations over the coming years. But as the previous panel discussed and talked through, how do we deal with some of the challenges around data privacy? How do we deal with the challenge of siloed data? How do we build an ecosystem of data that is able to function and really live up to the opportunity that presents? The future looks very bright for cloud, and I think everyone will agree that it is something that most organizations, if not all organizations, are looking to focus on. I think the challenges that we see is this vast quantity of increasing data that is infinitely connected. I think, John, you mentioned data is everywhere, and that's an absolutely true statement. It now is a part of all of our lives, and the interconnectedness of that data impacts our lives in many, many different ways. In order to really move forward, we need to understand that the management of that in the cloud is of critical importance with the sheer complexity, volume, and veracity of the data that we're looking to establish. As we'll see by some of the statistics here, we're looking at huge volumes of data. Organizations looking to shift 90% of their workload to the cloud. This creates a unique opportunity, but also that same challenge that I was talking about. Some of the challenges which have been brought up and discussed briefly, and I'm sure our panelists will cover off a number of these, but data security, the cost of the migration to the cloud, cross-border regulations. How do we deal with each of these items? And how do we most efficiently gain access? So one of the things that we've certainly seen in the market is a move towards this understanding of a lineage-first approach. Lineage really becoming the key capability to understand data that is combined and merged, really understanding how data is intersecting. Graph technologies, starting to take hold because of their ability to deal with, this massive connected data. And we think this lineage first approach, focusing on data management, really diving into the how, the why, and the impact of this across the data management estate is critical. So let me introduce this esteemed panel. Some real industry leaders here who have gone through several journeys of cloud data management, understanding the challenges of both on-prem as well as the privacy. So firstly, David Knott, the Digital Transformation Officer for Google. Welcome, David. Hopefully you can just do a quick mic check.
Yes, thanks very much, Phil. Great to be here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, David. Next, we have Tom Jenkins, who is the Head of Data and Analytics Risk at HSBC. Tom, just a quick check for yourself as well.
Afternoon, Phil.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. We have Lorraine Waters, who is the Chief Data Officer at Solidatus.
Afternoon. Thank you.
Great to have you here as well, Lorraine. And Colin Gibson, who is the CDMC Product Management Lead for the EDM Council.
Hi, Philip. Great to be here.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much all for taking the time to join this panel. I think that there's going to be some real insights produced, having both a cross-section of people who have worked at the very heart of these very complex organizations, and then also, on the other side being, with the cloud service providers. I think there's a real mix of perspective here, which will bring some great insights. So first of all, before we jump into the actual discussion, housekeeping note: if anyone wants to ask questions, please do so, so that we can ask the panel, the questions that really matter to the audience. I think one of the keys to the EDM Council is really making sure that we're getting the audience interaction, that we have visibility from the participants on what are the burning questions. So please don't be shy, ask some questions, and we'll put those to the panelists. So to kick things off, we're going to start with I think the first pillar to moving to the cloud is to understand, the strategy. So I'd like to ask a number of the panelists. So I think I might start with David. What are the key strategies that you're seeing organizations implementing in their move to the cloud? What are the factors that they're really focusing on?
So I'm seeing, as you can imagine, lots of different companies has lots of different strategies. Unsurprisingly, data is frequently at the heart of those, or seems to be getting a bit of an echo. Is that okay now? Okay, good.
Yes.
So, good.
Yep.
So, so a range of strategies. I think probably the fundamental strategy that people find their way to, they may not start there, but they find their way to, which I think is also the strategy that gets the most value out of cloud, is to think of cloud as a true platform. So lots of people start from the position that it's a good solution to fit certain niche problems they may have. They might be problems of cost, or problems of risk, or problems of agility. But increasingly what we're seeing is customers or companies think of cloud as a platform where you can do wide category of things, but say one category of things. That category of things may, for example, be analytics and insights, or AI engineering. And I think we're seeing that platform strategy become increasingly strong, and the companies who adopt that platform strategy experience most success, because it's basically what allows them to go deepest on cloud and really focus on the things that are most important to them. So a range of strategies, that's probably the one that is emerging as a prevalent strategy, and the one that I think brings the most profound value to companies making that move.
Yeah, I think that's a great sort of view. Is that it's not really just a this use case there or this use case there. Really, it's that all in on the cloud, really utilizing the availability of the platform. Lorraine, what's your view in the market?
Well, I think most organizations are now adopting a cloud-first approach. I think the rationale is compelling. You know, you showed us some of the statistics earlier. And I remember back in probably about 2017, so not that long ago, the organization that I worked for at the time, the CIO, announced in 2017, I think it was, that we were going to become a cloud first organization. And I remember thinking, oh my God, how ambitious is that? And he said within 1 year we would have X% of our key business processes and data on the cloud. And we all took a deep breath, really, because we had a lot of big in-flight programs that were leveraging the sort of big data Hadoop infrastructure that we had built. And that meant that we had to divert funding away from those key projects to look at redesigning solutions. So every solution now had to look at, you know, being built on cloud first. Every piece of software that we were buying, we had to make sure was either cloud native or adaptable, which was a real challenge at that time. So for organizations that are just looking at adopting that cloud first approach now, I think that is something to consider. I think, you know, way back when, we also set about doing some communications with our regulators, you know, to convince them that we had put some real thought into this and that it was a safe option for us. Some were receptive and some were not. But now we see that a lot of our regulators, including our home regulator, have also adopted a cloud-first approach. So things have really changed in those few years, and people are a lot more convinced around what they're trying to do. That what they're trying to do is safe, is doable, and so yeah, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. You know, for the amount of data and for the scale and speed, for the compute power that we need these days, we really all need to be looking at how we evolve our strategies into cloud first.
Yeah, I think you make some excellent points there. It's convincing the regulators that we have the right structures in place to make sure that we can sort of do this safely and effectively. So you mentioned a number of challenges there, and I think we see that there is a number of challenges. I think I highlighted a few of the ones there, but wanted to get the panel's kind of view on what are the key challenges that you're seeing, both, you know, internally within your organizations, and I think more broadly externally, about firms that are looking to migrate to the cloud. Tom, first, I think to you, what are you seeing as you know the critical challenges?
I think picking up on a couple of points Lorraine made there, you know, firstly, there's this sort of internal challenge around your strategy to flip from, you know, an internal build to a cloud first strategy. And, you know, none of us really work in simple environments. You know, we're dealing with a very large estate and a huge amount of complexity, and often, you know, an internal strategy, a business strategy that is set in motion with significant investment against what we have already. So I think one of the big things that we all have to face is, you know, how do we make that move from what we're doing today to the way that we want to operate without disrupting that delivery path, right? Without disrupting those commitments. And I think that, you know, what we see in a lot of organizations is a separate channel to delivering cloud first while we continue with what we're doing, something that allows that innovation and experimentation and learning of how to do this in an environment that sort of sits away from your current production, and then a gradual pivot across. And that brings in, you know, that long running hybrid environment and the need to move things out of your own premises and onto the cloud gives you, you know, a significant number of challenges. You sort of mentioned in your preamble the security side. You know, I think all of us, and you know, Lorraine mentioned regulatory engagement. All of us acknowledge really that, you know, the security in most of our large scale public cloud providers is pretty first class, right? And it's a bit of a nonsense to suggest that individual organizations can really exceed that. But, you know, privacy regulation has ramped up enormously over the past few years, and the safe handling, the onward handling, the outsourcing arrangements, the continuity planning, and the sort of multi-jurisdictional pressures, both on individual rights and on our role in the broader economic system to make sure that what we do is safe and sound, and we have continuity and avoid lock-in and avoid, sort of concentration risk. I think these are the sort of big discussions once we move from doing some things sort of cloud first to operating really truly at scale in cloud that we're going to all have to overcome.
Yeah, I think you highlight some critical points there. Colin, what's your view? Obviously, having just gone through the CDMC initiative and the challenges that's been looking to address.
Yeah, so as we heard from Ollie in the introduction, companies have spent an awful lot of time building controls and understanding what they've got on premises, and it's knowing how to do that same thing, knowing how to control what they've put in the cloud. I mean, a big theme that came through quite early on in CDMC is you've got to catalog everything. If you don't know, if you're not sure that you're capturing everything and cataloging everything, how do you know if you've put something important onto the cloud that you shouldn't have put onto the cloud? Similarly with classification, you have to classify everything. And then only at that point, after you've cataloged everything and classified everything, then you can start to choose when to apply the controls and work out how to apply those, the controls using the new tools and the new approaches that the cloud enables. So it's really sort of doing that piece of getting that foundation in up front for cataloging and classification. The other thing I'd say is don't forget good data management practices. You need the good foundations of data management. You need to have data ownership. You need to have authorized sources. You need to have a privacy framework. If you haven't got that on premises, you're not going to magically solve it on the cloud. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's learn from what you've done the first time round to make sure the second time round is much better. Perfect. So jumping in then, so we're looking at we've talked about some of the challenges, but what's being done by the cloud providers to enable organizations to move to the cloud, and what's being done by, or what can be done by organizations to enable themselves to move to the cloud effectively. I think if we go to David on what the cloud providers are looking to do to enable organizations to move swiftly to the cloud.
Yeah, so thanks, Phil. So I think the first and most obvious thing is participate in groups such as the EDM Council and contribute to frameworks such as the one we're discussing. I think that sounds like an obvious thing, but I think it is good to see. I think the previous panel had Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and IBM. It's no secret we're all fierce competitors with each other, but I think the fact that we've all turned up and contributed and participated in this shows that, as we all think, there is a strong interest for everybody, the industry, the cloud industry, and all the industries we serve, of getting our head straight on topics such as how to manage data. So I think the first thing is just contributing to industry frameworks so that everybody has a common language and vocabulary. I think the second thing, and I'll say two things which are going to sound slightly contradictory to each other. So the second thing is keep adding more products. If for all those people on the panel in the audience who are already cloud customers, you're probably already going through experience of you sign up to a particular cloud platform. We've all got similar looking consoles. They've all got a great big list of products down the left hand side, and that list is probably, if you go back and look tomorrow, it'll probably be slightly longer than it is today. And we keep launching new products. And part of the reason we do that is to fill gaps in coverage of capabilities. So that's one thing we do. And then the second thing is that we don't imagine that we can do everything ourselves, which is why we work with companies such as Solidatus and others to basically give us a rounded portfolio of things. But then the other thing is, one of the feedback we get is that, and to be honest, it's feedback I used to give myself when I was a customer rather than working for a cloud provider, is that sometimes that great big long list of products can feel like the Lego box without the instructions, or one of my team used to say is like the bicycle. You want a bicycle and you get a cardboard box with loads of parts in it. So I think increasingly we are trying to package those together into more end-to-end platforms. So, for example, within Google, we've got our Dataplex solution, our Vertex AI solution, and the idea of those is to help people form end-to-end data management capabilities and end-to-end AI engineering and management capabilities. Having said that, I think that will always be a combined thing. I think we'll offer those rounded, more platform-based solutions for people who want simplicity, but actually for particularly big, complex companies, they often want a degree of finer grained control. So we'll continue to offer the underlying products that people can then put together, integrate with their own products, etc. So so that's how we're trying to help.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really key points. That standardization, making sure everyone comes together, so we're speaking that common language, so we have that interoperability, so that it's the barrier to entry is as low as possible, so we can get that adoption. Really, really critical. And then exactly, kind of capability versus solution. Certain clients will want just the capabilities, others will want a packaged solution, and I think having those both is critical there. So moving on to Colin, what do you think are sort of some of the key enablers that organizations should be focusing on to get themselves to move to the cloud?
So I'm bound to say CDMC, aren't I? So I'll say CDMC, and building on what David said, it is a 164-page requirement specification. Think of it that way. It's got people's view of what is good practice. It's got advice in there for what practitioners should do, and it's got advice for what cloud service providers should do, and it hopefully ties that all together into something that's pretty coherent and pretty comprehensive. It's also got an ecosystem around it, so we have a number of partners signed up already to help their clients do assessments to see where they are on that cloud journey, and ultimately to get certified as well. So look at CDMC and leverage all the bits of it. It goes from governance and accountability through to data architecture and other things in the middle. So it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into sort of the next question around controls and really, what are the controls that organizations need to think about? What are the controls that they obviously have on-prem in place that they move to the cloud? And I think, Tom, obviously, with HSBC being a heavily regulated organization, what are the key controls for you, the key areas that you're focusing on, as that move to that cloud-first strategy?
Yeah, look, I think we touched a few of these earlier. The thinking about our privacy, protecting our customer and employee data, thinking about the confidentiality and secrecy of data. I think one of the additional complexities, obviously, once this sort of leaves your own ability to directly control location, is localization considerations as well, and the portability of data. But I think something in the regulated space that we see increasingly is this sort of focus on risk around the sort of business continuity and lock-in and long-term provision. It's certainly something that has been an active part of my dialogues with regulators around this. Is concerns about making sure that we're not tied to a particular vendor or beholden to as David said, one of the long list of products that sits in there as a part of our control framework. But I think the critical thing is moving from a position of what tends to be a quite well understood set of controls in place, even if they're not complete across all organizations on-prem, to an environment where the understanding of where they need to be applied, right, the data about that tells us the applicability of controls is complete, and the controls are automated from the outset. And I think that's the actual types of controls don't necessarily change from our on-premise environment. The building right from the start and building them automated is the key.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tom. And I'm getting the wrap up signal, so we might just jump in and thank the panel very much for all their insights. All the questions that we haven't got to, we'll make sure that we get to, and everyone will get a response to the questions that have been asked. If Evelyn, if you want to just then wrapping up, I think final word from myself at Solidaris. We think that this is a critical area, hence being heavily involved in CDMC, as well as focusing on how to bring data management technology to the fore, and really what we're what we're seeing is, and what we're trying to evangelize is, a way of managing and dealing with this complexity. So as we land data in the cloud, understanding, cataloging, categorizing it, stitching it all together to create, very similar kind of sets of complexity that we have on-prem. As this evolves, it becomes more and more complex. I think this is the key piece. Is what it looks like now is not what it'll look like in 5 years, but we always want to be able to get back to this singular view of how can we see the data that we need to immediately. So I'd like to again thank everyone on the panel for their views. We are now going to move into the next session. So we have option 1 and option 2 available. Please select the next session that you wish to attend. And again, thanks everyone to the audience for participating as well as the panelists. Thanks very much.